So today we're going to be talking about how we can level up our websites using ChatGPT and NextJS. Now, I will just share a quick disclaimer. You don't have to know NextJS to get something out of this talk. We're mostly going to be talking about some of the concepts of large language models and how we can apply them to modern web frameworks. We're just going to use NextJS as an example. So I want to share how I even got to this stage to begin with. About 2 years ago, I built an app as a side project, and a bunch of people are using it. And they've been using it for 2 years, and I haven't touched it since. So I have this fear that eventually, one day, they're just going to stop using it. So I asked myself, what can I do with minimal time and effort, because it's a side project, I don't want to waste my time, to get them excited and wanting to continue to use it? Can anybody guess what I look to? ChatGPT. So basically with my user base, they log into the app, they look at the data I'm collecting for them, and then they download it and then do a bunch of spreadsheet voodoo to get their answers. And I said, wouldn't it be cool if I just automated that using ChatGPT? So that's what I did. And each month, I sent their data to ChatGPT along with their questions, and I just emailed them the answers. And they loved it so much that they were like, hey, what can we do? Blah, blah, blah. I told them ChatGPT isn't free. I'd love if you paid for it. And they agreed. And so for almost no work, I went from a side project to them paying for something just because I sent them something to ChatGPT. It was really cool. While the market is super crowded, you might be wondering like, hey, there's so many chatbots out there, blah, blah, blah. There's always going to be a use case where we can provide value, even if it's a really niche, nuanced thing. And that's kind of what I stumbled upon here. So I wanted to share with all of you how to kind of get set up and integrated with it so that you guys can do the same thing. Before we jump in, just to get a pulse on the room, raise your hand if you've used like ChatGPT or another LLM for personal use. Nice. Raise your hand or keep it up if you've integrated with an LLM via code. Cool. I was hoping everyone wouldn't keep their hand up, so my talk is still relevant. Keep your hand up if you've deployed it to production. Cool, 1. And then I'm assuming if you haven't made money off of it, this is kind of the dream for all of us developers, right? You build an app and people want to pay for it. So hopefully by the end of this talk, you feel a little more confident in integrating with the LLM and maybe can make some money at the end of it. So whether learning about large language models is something you're interested in or not, it will most certainly impact us as developers. 1 year from now, the development landscape is going to look very different. And who knows what it's going to look like in 3, 5, and even 10 years. No matter where you are in your dev journey, it's going to impact us in some way. It could be auto prompt generation with our CLI tools. It could be writing code for us. Shoot, it could be writing entire applications for us. I'm not saying LLMs will solve every problem, and they don't. But what I am saying is let's start learning about them so we can keep up with the rapidly changing environment so that we can stay on the forefront of technologies. Let's have some fun while doing it. So my goal today is to help everyone in the room feel more confident understanding large language models and code, gain a better understanding of how they work, actually build with it, and deploy it out to production, all in 25 minutes. Let's go. My name is Jim Becker, and I've been at BTI 360 for 12 years. The past 5 years, I've been working on teams primarily focused on AI/ML solutions. And today, we're going to be walking through some LLM concepts, why we chose NextJS. We're going to actually set up and talk through OpenAI and a NextJS project, and finally deploy it. So let's jump in. Has anybody heard of Minecraft? Sweet. I don't play it much. I would call myself a casual gamer as it relates to Minecraft. But today we're going to build a Minecraft website that is very simple, but will allow us to kind of go through the nuance of large language model integration and prompt engineering. So here's what we're going to build. My mouse is over here. There we go. Cool. Which Minecraft block are you? So you can imagine you're going to put the first letter of your name in here and your birthday month. You're going to hit submit, and it's going to give you an answer provided to you by ChatGPT. So let's jump in and start. Before, though, we need to understand LLM terminology. So starting at the top, a token is the base unit when you interact with a large language model, and it loosely corresponds to a word. So here's a quick phrase. How many tokens do you think this is? 2. Yep, you're right. How about this one? Any guesses? 5, good guess. 4. It's actually 7, yes. So punctuation actually counts as tokens, right? So we have hey, front runners, comma, I, Jim, period. So the next thing we need to understand is context window sizes. The context window is measured in tokens, and it talks about how much text an LLM can consider before generating it. Think about the LLM context window like a brain. You can only fit so much information before you just can't comprehend it anymore. That's how it kind of works. Now, this is really cool because it's been rapidly growing in the past year. In August of last year, the larger context windows were like 16,000. In November, some of the average ones were around 32,000 tokens. January, 128,000. And in February, Google Gemini just released with their largest model supporting 1 million tokens. Just to ground that example really quick, 1 million tokens is about 2 large novels. So you could literally give it 2 entire novels and ask very specific questions and get very specific answers back. And I imagine this is going to continue to grow and grow and grow and get cheaper too, allowing us to do really cool things. So, OpenAI. Just talking through some of the cool capabilities really quick. There's a lot, but here's some of the keynote ones. We have text generation, right? Text comes in, text comes out. Summarization is a great example of that. Image generation. Here's some text, generate me an image. Vision. Here's an image, describe me what's going on. And then it also has speech to text and text to speech. And then as of about 2-3 weeks ago, they just released a video model where you can give it text and it will generate high quality videos up to a minute long. If I have time at the end, I'll show you some. They're awesome. Today, we're going to be focused on text generation for our Minecraft Which Block Are You bot. Talking through some pricing, just so you can kind of understand what you're getting yourself into. Their newest model, GPT-4 Turbo, you pay per million tokens, right? So when you send it data, it's $10 per million tokens. And for it to give a response, it's $30 per million tokens. Now, you're not paying $10. You're just paying a fraction of that for smaller input and output tokens. And just to show you how much cheaper the older model is, 3.5, which is still very good, it's 50 cents per million tokens input and $1.50 for output. So from there, you're going to log into ChatGPT and you're going to add a credit card payment. And the reason why you need to do this is because their free tier is like 3 requests per minute. And if you're playing around with it, that's just not enough. So you'll go ahead and do that. The second thing, I added this slide last night because I ran a script the other day that kept running overnight and there was an issue with the loop, and I woke up and we ran out of credits and our app went down because it's not in production, don't worry. Because we hit our monthly budget and all the other parts of the system that were using it started failing. So set your monthly budget, something you're comfortable to, so you don't make the same mistake I did. From there, I'm not going to go through all these, but there's 2 limits to be aware of. There's token limits, and each model has a different one, but it's how many tokens per minute you can send that model. And then request and other limits. So the request limit is how many requests per minute you can send. So now that we've gone through some of the usability of OpenAI, let's create our API key. So the first thing you're going to do is go up to the top here and click on API keys, and we can go ahead and create a secret key. And that's going to give us an organization ID and a secret key. Let's save those off for later. The ChatGPT API is pretty straightforward. You install it via npm yarn bun and pnpm, whatever your fancy is. You initialize the OpenAI instance, and then you call the chat completions create method. Now there are 3 roles to know: system, user, and assistant. A system role allows you to define what your chatbot can do and what it can't do. So in this case, you're a helpful assistant. You might even say, hey, don't respond with more than 2 sentences because I don't want to pay a lot of money for your responses. The user role is what the user is going to be providing. And the assistant role is the chatbot actually answering the question or responding to the user. The context window size is a summation of all of the strings on the right and in those content strings. So as you can imagine, as your chat history gets larger and larger, every request is getting larger, so you're paying more and more. So you might do cool things like, hey, maybe I only send the most recent 10 conversations or whatever to kind of reduce cost. And another cool thing is this, the last question there, where was it played? Since we are providing chat history, it actually has context of what's happening. So we're talking about the World Series, so it knows that. If I were to cut off that first one, it wouldn't know how to answer that question. Cool. So why NextJS? Has anybody in the room used it? Or maybe React? Raise your hand if you use React too. Cool, even better. So NextJS is a web framework built on top of React. And there's a lot of reasons why it's really cool. But one of the reasons is it actually supports route handlers. It takes a node server to host a Next.js project to support server-side rendering, partial hydration, and other cool features. But the thing we really care about today is route handler. Since it takes a node server, we can actually build an API that's hosted in our web framework. So we can have our front end and our back end all on the same node server to serve up an application. And as a small team or a side project, it's really nice to speak the same language, deploy one artifact, so you don't have to context switch to do a front end and a back end separately. Cool, so what is a route handler? Well, a route handler is defined by the folder structure in the project. So you have /app, you create a folder called API, chat, and then a file called route.ts. And within there, you can define a function. And in this case, we want to create a getter, and we return a response. And so over here, when we deploy our app, it's actually going to expose a get call at /API/chat. All right, we've gone through ChatGPT. We've gone through a little bit about what Next provides us. Let's start building. And for the sake of time, we're just going to share snippets of code. So the first thing we're going to do, and you can find this on the main page, is create the Next project. So npx create Next app. That's going to create all the scaffolding for your project. We're using OpenAI, so let's install it. We then had those environment variables that we saved off. Let's create a .env file and throw them in there so that we can integrate with ChatGPT. The next thing we need to do is create our two inputs, the first letter of our name and birthday month. So here's how you do that in React, right? You have a useState method, and the useState method exposes two things, a getter and a setter. So in this case, a first letter and a birthday month. We then need to bind them to HTML. So in this case, our getter, as you can see in the value equals first letter and at the bottom value equals birthday month, we're binding the getters to those to display the value in the input box. And then on change, whenever somebody types something, call the setter to set that value. From there, we want to be able to show loading and the response. And for this use case, we're going to have the response be either the answer or an error message if it fails. Here's how we render that. We have a ternary operator that says if it's loading, show a div called loading. And if it's not, if we have a response, show that. Then we need to add a button that calls a function. So in this case, we're going to create a call ChatGPT function on click. Here's all it's doing. On click, we set loading to true, and the cool thing about Next.js and React is it'll actually re-render this whole component when any setters are called within the application or in the component. So set loading true, and then we make an API call to /API/chat with the body including the first letter and birthday month. And then we set the response to the value or show an error and set loading to false. Here is the full JS, and here's the full HTML. So now the API route. So the API route, we're going to read the first letter and birthday month. From there, we're going to call ChatGPT with something saying, can you provide me a Minecraft block that is best represented by the following information? Here's my first letter and birthday month. Can you provide Y? And lastly, we're going to return the response if it succeeds, and if it fails, set the value. And here is the full backend call. That's all the code for this whole app, minus all the bells and whistles and CSS. So a little bit of prompt engineering. The first time I did this, this was my response. Can anybody tell me, would you be excited to see this if you were using this app? No? Why? Too much text? Cool. And actually, one of the things I ran into, every time I ran this, I got completely different answers. So the first thing I wanted to focus on was consistency. So here's one sentence where I added, output the response in the following format. You are a block name, 2 bullets explaining why. So I did that, and this was my response. We're getting there. Still a little long, so let's focus on that. Ensure each bullet is 1 sentence long. Cool, that's a little better. It's only 1 sentence. One of the issues I have with this is you share a connection with the spooky season of October. It's kind of lame, a little boring. Let's focus on tone. Your audience is older teenagers who love memes and like to joke around. Cool. It's literally the only block that starts with a J, making you as unique and essential to the Minecraft world as you are the world. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. Now, there is a whole domain in prompt engineering. This is just an entry, the gateway drug to it. So, some other considerations. We're relying on ChatGPT's knowledge of Minecraft blocks. The training date cutoff was January 2024. So one of the things we could do is provided an array in the context window saying, here are all my block names, here's the descriptions and images. So we could actually show blocks in the response. Prompt protection. We talked about system prompts versus user prompts. This is currently our system prompt. There's an issue here. For those of you who know what SQL injections are, we have a prompt injection problem here. We are allowing users to enter first letter and birthday month to our system prompt. What we could do instead is say the system prompt is defining the format that the user is going to provide that information in. We've just protected ourselves from them putting a period and saying reply with 1,000 sentences. It costs you a lot of money. Not cool. Or on the front end, we could have a name input box that limits 1 character and a month dropdown to reduce the amount of stuff the user can type in. Lastly, app deployment. Super quick here. Let's see. Where's my... Here we go. There's a lot of different ways you can host a Next app. One of the cool things about it's a node server, so you can host it in a container, run it in Kubernetes. You can use a cloud provider. I'm a big fan of Versal, and here's why. We are going to go back to the home page really quick, hit Add New, hook it up to our GitHub account. It already knows it's a NextJS project. I can come in here, add some environment variables, my OpenAI keys, and once I do that, it will deploy it out to a domain name that I can then hit. And it deploys branches too. So if I click here, here is my app. And we just deployed that in less than 30 seconds. It's pretty cool. Coming back to my slide deck here. Cool. So to summarize, we talked through some high-level LLM concepts. We built a very simple app, and we deployed it out all in less than 30 minutes. This is just an introduction to large language models. There's so many more things we can do, and I hope today's talk encouraged you to get your hands dirty a little bit so that you can kind of keep up with the rapidly changing environment and hopefully do some really cool innovation on top of it. If you want to learn more, feel free to reach out to me at jim.becker@bti360, and here's a link to the GitHub repo if you want to pull down the project and play with the prompts a little bit and see where it takes you. Thank you.